Welcome to Free Thought Matters, produced by the Freedom From Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of atheists and agnostics. We invite you to join us. Visit our webpage at ffrf.us. John de Lancie is an actor, a director, and producer. He's best known for portraying Q in the TV series Star Trek: The Next Generation. De Lancie has appeared in numerous films and TV shows. He's been a member of many acting groups, including the American Shakespeare Company, and he's performed with major symphony orchestras around the world. John de Lancie co-owned the production company Alien Voices and has directed a number of operas. John de Lancie, who has portrayed Clarence Darrow, was the first recipient of the Freedom From Religion Foundation's new Clarence Darrow Award, which he accepted at our convention in San Francisco, where Annie Laurie and I were able to sit down with him for a few moments.
So, John, you have received a Clarence Darrow Award. There's quite a few connections between you and Clarence Darrow. You've portrayed him.
I have. Ed Asner and I and a group of wonderful actors, we went out on tour for 3 years, 1 month every year, to perform the transcripts from the Scopes monkey trial.
Wow.
And it was my introduction to this fundamentalist world of thought. And but the Scopes monkey trial was the transcripts are really terrific, and it was a whole discussion about how they came about, and you know, the town of Dayton and the people at the time. So from an acting point of view, it was interesting. It's all the stuff that most actors are interested in, that having to do with history and, you know, all this type of thing.
Controversy.
And controversy, sure, that was the
And some very eloquent lines by Clarence Darrow.
Oh, the way in which they spoke back then, in 1925, was, well, we just don't have that anymore. The ability to get up and speak extemporaneously without the ums and you knows and the buts and like that.
And the likes.
Yeah, and the likes. Was really extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Before television, though, I mean, people were expecting that Chautauqua circuit. They would sit for 3-4 hours and listen to people just speak.
Absolutely, and the better you did it, the more popular you were, and the more people were interested in hearing you.
And there was no amplification either.
And there was no amplification.
You had to speak up.
Right. So what's kind of interesting for me is that I've gone on to work a little bit on the 2005 Dover Intelligent Design trial. And while I'm delighted with the outcome, and the difference between the two trials ostensibly is that in the Scopes monkey trial, the judge simply did not want to hear the evidence about intelligent design, or excuse me, about evolution. But in the 2001 trial, the Dover trial, the judge said, let's hear it. Let's hear it all. So that's the big difference in terms of content, but in terms of style, it's totally different. And so it is very difficult to put together a piece that is of a dramatic nature, because they're just not speaking with that type of dialogue.
So is that what you've done or are trying to do?
That is what I have outlined, yeah.
Now you're doing a lot of other things. You're working, I believe, on a cartoon, educational science cartoon for children, aren't you?
You know, I have not been able to get that off the ground.
But it's
all of it is all laid out. It's all ready to go, but I've not been able to get it off the ground. It's perhaps a funding issue, but it's mostly that the people who are very interested in this, my friends who are very interested in it, also are people who are really high up in that world, and they have a lot of work. So to one of the things about animation, which I didn't know when I got into it, it is a long process. It's not like sitting down at my desk, writing a script, getting the actors together, spending a couple of weeks rehearsing, and then it's done. No, this is months, if not a year's worth of work. And so I have not been successful at it.
Well, what's the idea? To educate children in science, or?
The idea was, I always look at things, especially in terms of curiosity and religion, and through the eyes of an 8-year-old. I remember as an 8-year-old, or around that time, maybe even a little younger, saying, wait a minute, Jonah lived in a whale? Well, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me. Well, luckily, I feel that that's sort of the beginning of that slippery slope if the response from the adult is, yes, he did live in a whale, and it's true. It's true.
That's what they told me.
That you got it. Yeah. So that's the beginning of that slippery slope. For me, I just went, I don't know, it doesn't sound right. And luckily, I sort of veered away from that. But I look at that kid who is right on that slippery slope and might be going down and might be in an environment where he or she does not have the wherewithal to go, that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, is it really? I mean, so these were 1 minute, 60-second opportunities to give these kids 2 or 3 little ideas that they could push back with, just to push back.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
So I'll give you $100 to start. Will that help?
You know what? In the end, it really wasn't the money. I mean, I could go on to a Kickstarter and I'm sure raise the money and what have you. It was really to get the animators, the producer, the writer, the science people all together to go, okay, well, this is it, you know, and let's get going on this. But I've tried it a couple of times. I will not give up on this idea. But then again, you ask me, where is it now? Well, that's the truth. This is where it is right now.
Now, were you brought up in a family that had religion? Or because you were talking about being an 8-year-old looking at John and the Whale?
Yeah, I essentially no. I mean, my mother was French, and she had been brought up as a Catholic, and you know, it was right at the beginning of World War II, and it might have taken with her a little bit. My father, definitely not.
And your father is a composer, was a composer?
My father was a musician. He was an oboe player. He grew up in Berkeley, California, went to the Curtis Institute, ended up with the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is where I was born. So, but, you know, I went, the good school, or one of the good schools, was the Episcopal Academy, where I went to school. And so there was teaching there along those lines. I think I was sent to Sunday school, where I was asked, actually, after a couple of sessions, to not come back, because I think I was probably saying to the younger kids, to the kids my age, I don't know, doesn't sound right.
Badge of honor, John.
It is a badge of honor. So I don't have that same, you know, when you say, oh, well, that's what I was told. And so I don't have that experience of being 20 years old or something like that and going, wait a minute, I feel like I've been lied to all this time. I don't have that experience.
So at our convention in San Francisco, you talked a little bit about lying and this whole atmosphere of alternate facts and truth in that. Let's look at a little bit of that speech that he gave us.
I'm told that having faith is believing without proof, without reason. I think you can have faith and keep your reason. I'll go a step further. You must keep your reason, otherwise you will lose your soul to liars, manipulators, cheats, and demagogues. I'm not a liar, but I play them, and I don't think I don't think of gullible as charming or quaint. I see it for what it is, a target of opportunity. And so do a lot of others who troll our political landscape. A young lady in West Virginia once told me that God was her bus driver. What does that mean, I asked. It means I can sit at the back of my bus and party hardy because God is driving my bus. I have a feeling that tonight, on the eve of one of the most important elections of our lifetime, unbeknownst to her, a lot of people are driving her bus. And while our young lady has not been paying attention to where she's going for a very long time, the micro lies have been piling up, and for her tonight they are indistinguishable from the big lies. I fear that tonight she is so ill prepared to differentiate fact from fiction, truth from lies, that it's but a few short steps to believing that separating children from their parents keeps us safe, that Central American mothers pushing strollers down a hot Mexican highway are a threat to our country, that freedom of religion somehow means you can discriminate against those who don't share your beliefs, that telling the truth makes you an enemy of the people, and that lying can't be all that bad if your cause is good. When so many are so willing to forsake reason in favor of faith, is it any wonder that our leaders embrace the unreasonable, the unimaginable? That's why educating children to be curious is so important. Why debunking the notion that morality is derived from a single book is so important. Why speaking up when others remain silent is so important. As George Orwell said, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. That's why organizations like Freedom from Religion are so important, because the greatest, most fundamental service we can do in this world is to keep truth alive. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
My name is Bill, and I'm an out-of-the-closet atheist, meaning I don't really care what you believe, and I don't really think that you should care what I believe. I was raised in South Dakota in a strict Catholic family. I was an altar boy. I served Mass a lot of Sundays twice. The priest gave us this little card that said, "In case of accident, please call a priest." I don't really like that idea anymore, since I left the church about 40 years ago. Now, if you find me alongside the road after an accident, please call an ambulance and an EMT.
And we're back with Free Thought Matters. I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor, and we're talking with actor John de Lancie. And I want to get back to Clarence Darrow, because you were so kind as to help dedicate a statue to Clarence Darrow that the Freedom from Religion Foundation put up at the home of the Scopes trial in Dayton, Tennessee on the lawn, because there was a statue of William Jennings Bryan and nothing to commemorate Clarence Darrow.
Right.
And because you really cared about science, you got yourself there and helped us do this dedication, and you made some very eloquent remarks. And I want to show just a clip from your speech there.
Sure.
But in the world of the religious versus the secular, this is ground zero. the epicenter. And so in honor of these two men who had the courage of their convictions and the good manners to engage in this eternal debate with civility, humor, and respect for one another, I'm going to very briefly invoke some of their ideas from this famous trial, because who better to speak for them than themselves? Brian will speak first, since he has been occupying this space all by himself for quite a few years. I think it's been a little boring for Mr. Brian to have been standing there all alone amongst only those who share his views, but that's going to change now. Brian said, "Evolution is a doctrine that not only destroys man's belief in God, but takes from him every moral standard that the Bible gives us. The Bible is the Word of God. The Bible is the only expression of man's hope for salvation. The Bible is not going to be driven out of this court by experts who have come hundreds of miles to testify that they can reconcile evolution and its ancestors in the jungle with a man made by God in his image and put here for the purpose of a divine plan." Now, Darrow, the Bible, he said, is a book primarily of religion and morals. It is not a book of science, never was and never was meant to be. There is nothing prescribed that would tell you how to build a railroad or a steamboat or how to make anything that would advance civilization. It is not a book on biology. They knew nothing about it. They thought the earth was created 4,004 years before the Christian era. We know better. If today you can take a thing like evolution and make it a crime to teach it in the public schools, tomorrow you can make it a crime to teach it in the private schools. At the next session, you can ban books and newspapers. And if you can do one, you can do the other. And after a while, it's the setting of man against man and creed against creed, until with flying banners and beating drums, we are marching backwards to the 16th century, when bigots burned the men who dared to bring any intelligence, enlightenment, or culture to the human mind. I believe in what Darrow said, and I'm happy to say the trend is solidly in the direction of a secular America where religious beliefs, while respected, are reserved for the privacy of one's home or place of worship and not imposed on a general public, where religious thought is not confused with science, and where eating from the tree of knowledge is indeed a good thing and encouraged. And now that Darrow has taken up his rightful place along with Brian, the debate can be heard by all. Thank you.
And that really did feel like ground zero, standing right there at the site of the 1925 Scopes trial in Dayton, Tennessee, between those two statues of those completely opposite points of view. And you remember later that night we went to a play put on by the locals that was reenacting it, a totally different reenactment from what you must have been doing with Ed Asner.
Yes and no. They used some of the trial transcripts in the same way that we did. But the question is how do you tell the story? And what they did, we told the story, narrative with an actual narrator and what have you. But their narrator, the person who took the audience through this story, was sort of a minstrel. He was a minstrel. An interesting idea. And they used as the interstitiary, I think is the word, interstitial, thank you, way of knitting things together, they used songs. But they were hymns, which made a lot of sense, except when you had Darrow, Malone, in other words, the Scopes singing these religious hymns. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, has nobody thought, like the director thought about the fact that this just doesn't make sense from a character point of view. So, but I found it to be really interesting. It was a little bit, for me, it was also a little bit of one of those, waiting for Guffman type things, because people knew who I was, and I usually like to sit in almost anything that I go to. I like to sit sort of far away, and it gives me an opportunity to not have to interact in any way whatsoever.
We had purchased seats right in the front row.
Right in the front row. So there were times where people were actually saying it right to me, and I'm like, oh, it's like this. It was, it was very fun.
We learned later that one of those hymns they sang was written in the 1940s.
Oh yeah.
They were reenacting a 1925 thing, so they were kind of proselytizing to us.
Yes, of course they were. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's ground zero of where they are, and they own the space, so they get to say what they want to say.
It's just unfortunate that it's still ground zero.
Yeah.
And that there were even death threats and great consternation that we would be putting up this statue to Clarence Darrow.
Yes, it is all too bad, because to me, there is no real discussion. There's no rationale about, the evolution. It is, as far as they're concerned, it's a slippery slope. And if you walk away, or if you somehow say, well, maybe it's not 4004 BC or something like that, you have lost the argument. I had an occasion just recently to a large group who were asking me, what's going on, and I said, oh, well, I worked on the Scopes trial, and I'm actually taking a look. Which was 1925, and now I'm taking a look at the 2005 Dover Intelligent Design trial. Isn't it interesting that here we are, 80 some years later, and we're still talking about evolution? That's all I said. Went on to talk about a bunch of other stuff. About 2 hours later, a woman came up to me and she said, do you know why we're still talking about evolution? And I thought, uh-oh, which side of this is this going to fall? And I said, no, why are we still talking about it? Because evolution is not mentioned in the Bible. And I said, well, neither are dishwashers mentioned in the Bible. Ha, ha, ha. And her response was, yes, they are.
Oh, no. Nostradamus kinds of...
And I went, well, that's the great Gulf fix there. That I will never be able to connect with her. I'm not so sure if her lying about dishwashers being involved, of course one could go, is it like a Maytag dishwasher or, but the fact is that I went, oh, here we are. This is, there's no rational conversation at this point.
Can't reason with it, but I can say that the man in the town who helped make sure that we could get the permit for the statue did come out to me as a creationist, but he said there should be both statues up.
Oh,
so at least that was something.
That's great.
And speaking of the statue, for a little moment of levity,
Yeah.
we do have a little clip.
Yes.
There was a little bit of a problem.
Right.
You were the tallest person, and you were going to help unveil it.
That's right.
And it got caught on a little tuft of his disheveled hair. So let's take a look at that, because it's very funny.
So, mission accomplished. We finally got Darrow unveiled to the world, and the sculptor was there, Zenas Froudakas, who actually flew in, who is a world-renowned sculptor.
Oh, and you can see why. I mean, it's lifelike. I mean, that's I think the greatest compliment you can give to something that you know to be, inanimate. It's not. It looks like Darrow. I mean, it's just really
now
terrific.
You're the first possessor of the miniature of the statuette.
Oh,
the
wow.
statue
Yeah.
is actually the real statue, only miniaturized. So very appropriate that you get to take that home.
Yeah, I know exactly where it's going to sit too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
where?
And we just at the entrance of our house, where we're just coming in because I'm going to be able to go and take a look at this. Yeah, that's terrific.
And so, in your career, do you think that you'll be continuing to pursue science in some way? I know you've worked with symphonies and done other educational things.
Sure, it's an opportunity. Mostly, it's not science that I mean, because then I could be part of the Planetary Society or something like that. It's really about religion for me. That interests me more. I'm very. I read a lot about this subject. I find it to be a fascinating subject. And there are many things that I think are quite wonderful in terms of putting together what I like are humanistic notions of be nice, be tolerant, be loving, be something like that. But it's that gray area, right in that zone there, that I'm very interested in. And why is it that one gets into that and then comes out being not interested in reason, being fearful? What happens in there? And so my interest will continue to be in the area of religion, teaching, the idea that you can have faith without losing your soul. You can be have interest and curiosity and be questioning, and not become a tool for demagogues to use you. You know, that telling the truth is important in all matters. Not just religious ones, and right now I think that the religious community has frankly lost their hold on that.
Their moral compass.
Their moral compass.
The high ground.
That you got it. You got it.
John, do you call yourself an atheist?
Sure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a great pleasure having you on Free Thought Matters, and thank you so much, and for helping us dedicate the Clarence Darrow statue.
Thank you. I'm delighted.
And thank you for watching Free Thought Matters.
Because free thought matters.